welcome to our Ashes of Creation live stream. This is our monthly development update live stream. Why are you running away?
Sorry, no, I'm trying to get the bear in.
Oh yeah, as you saw our pre-roll here, we have a lovely background that we're using. That kind of gives you a little sneak peek of a video that's coming out maybe next week or so. So get excited.
We're excited.
But if you can see the lovely brew bear behind.
Sorry, I keep moving the wrong direction.
There you go.
He's right over.
You can just slide.
Where?
Just get.
No, can't. Over.
I think
Okay, there he is.
His little ears twitch and stuff. It's so cute. That's one of our items on our monthly cosmetics. Yeah. So you're seeing some of those coming to fruition a little bit quicker now that we're getting all our character creations
groove
going.
on.
Yeah, so just to quickly introduce who we are and what we do for Ashes of Creation and Torpid Studios, we'll do that, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be going over today on this live stream, and then we'll get right to it. So quickly introduce yourself.
Hello, Sharif, creative director.
Jeffrey Bard, lead designer.
And I'm Margaret Krohn, your community marketing lead. So today we are going to be going over a quick studio update, design, engineering, character art, and environment art, as well as doing a Q&A. You all have submitted wonderful questions, and our lovely community manager, Toast, will be coming on over here, and she'll be asking all the questions to these guys, and hopefully they give you all the answers, or she'll ring them out of them. I don't know.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. It's fine. For quick updates, like we said, the monthly cosmetics are up, so you can go check out these ones. We will be swapping those over for the December one soon, so stay tuned for those. And then also, we wanted to make a note about the creative director's letter for quarter 3. We won't be having one for quarter 3, but quarter 4, we will be having one in December, so stay tuned for what that entails.
So we're going to be moving the quarter 3 update into the quarter 4 update, and that'll be at the end of December.
Yes. Yeah. Because there's some stuff that we wanted to talk about that we've been waiting on.
Yes.
So quickly, let's just talk a little bit about the studio update and where we're at, because we are moving.
Yes, we are moving soon. Things are going very good. We're moving towards the Castle Siege playable that people will be able to participate in. And we are also on the road towards Alpha 1, and we are, building up our preparations for getting you guys into experiencing Ashes of Creation. I'm pretty excited about that. And there's a lot of work that still is to be done, but we're making good progress on it.
Yeah.
So,
We're all very excited.
Yes.
Trying to contain it. So we're going to quickly go over design, and today Jeff is actually going to be representing design.
Yep, I don't have to leave.
His people's
live streams can be scary,
But it's okay.
Yeah, next month I hope to have a special guest. We'll see if we can convince him to get on.
Special guest.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you have going on the design side. I know that you guys have been working on Castle Siege, and you wanted to talk a little bit about the progress on that project.
Yeah, so we've been doing some internal playtests here, trying to get a feel for what the game is actually like when we play it live and not just in our heads. We've got our final piece of the puzzle given to us not too long ago on the destruction side of things, so we've been setting all that stuff up and getting it ready to go. Kind of the main thing that was holding back on us, we were waiting to see what the chaos system was going to bring us with Unreal, so we've integrated a little bit of that. It's not quite ready for prime time, so we're going to be still looking at it as we go forward. But right now we're going with our own rolled system, which is kind of what we expected. We've been able to play around with it and see what how the matches change when we get that stuff in. So it's been pretty exciting, trying to figure out the right balance of destructibility versus, when people can actually get past those walls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember there was a discussion that actually we were having last week about destruction. And something that came up in that discussion from one of the participants was, obviously when you have destruction components, you want to take a look at the aesthetic of the destruction as well as the performance of the destruction, right?
It's really important.
And that's really important. And obviously we want to, because of the large battles that we intend to have, we want to make sure that it's as performant as possible. And there was a concern about if we give up some of the fidelity of the aesthetic itself for performance, how will it hold up in a few years' times or something when against other competitors on the market? And one of the things that I've experienced, and probably many of you have experienced, is that the destruction mechanics and or visuals that are present in other MMORPGs that I've played, that you guys have played, really what I'm seeing in the testing today blows that away.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
From a visual standpoint,
real frenetic.
even if we are prioritizing, as we should, performance above all else,
right.
Still it is very visually aesthetic. So
yeah. Our effects guys, our environment guys, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we
it's
have
really
shown
cool.
some of that in our previous live stream. We took some screenshots and we showed you guys, so definitely go check out those images. And I think we have some more images today too. So,
Yeah.
You guys have been working really hard on that. And then
Yes.
all the playtesting. What has been the most useful piece of information that you guys have received?
Well, usually in this kind of first stage where we're doing it internal is kind of usually a numbers game. We do a bunch of Excel documents, kind of mapping out what we want things to do and kind of how we picture them. We figure out how long it takes to kill somebody. We figure out, the average lifespan of a player, and we kind of map that out. But those things don't capture what real play is like. And so these internal tests give us an opportunity to actually see what happens and how well those numbers align. And so that's kind of where we're going right now, is kind of tightening up those numbers, making sure that the time to kill is where we want it to be. It will be a little bit longer time to kill in Castle Siege than it will be in the BR. So it's a little bit different the way that we apply.
And is that more reminiscence of what you think the MMO will be like?
It'll be a lot closer. It's still a session-based thing, and we don't want people to, there's a limited set of abilities, and so we need to make sure that the action keeps moving, and you're not just, people are just not just health sponges, right?
It'll definitely be much closer, but it's still a good ways off from, I think, what that time to kill will be in the MMORPG. I mean, one of the main deviations from, let's say, APOC in the BR to the Castle Siege is that now your health and armor are predicated on your class selection as well. Mm-hmm. So there's more relevance to choosing a tank type class when it comes to damage mitigation and overall health pool than there is, let's say, a DPS, and that kind of gives that semblance of the trinity that exists. Right,
and you can also heal and
repair. Absolutely.
So that trinity will
to
exist, and each class will have its own special role, and you'll feel that we really wanted to lean into that class identity to make sure that you guys, when you're playing as a tank, feel like, hey, I'm this beefy dude who's preventing other people from killing my back line. So
we have a question from the chat which is not relevant to this discussion per se, but it is to the background that you're seeing back here, which is from Cryprim, who wants to know, may it be possible for a mayor to organize city festivals where residents will also have to collect and provide goods and resources to make the city more interesting, make careers more meaningful, promote the cohesiveness of a city, and bring players together to achieve common goals.
Mm-hmm. So part of the job of a government is not just to establish relationships between other nodes and to start specific build projects within the city, but also to organize certain events that allow for the citizenship to participate and determine the success or failure of said event. Whether or not that takes the form of a festival, maybe not specifically, but there are going to be opportunities in which the government, the mayor, gets to determine, hey, we need a event that you all citizens need to participate in, and perhaps even non-citizens as well. Whether or not it's festival, I don't know.
But part of the job of the mayor is to keep their citizens happy so that they can get elected again, and so there will be opportunities like that in order to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to share with us in regards to the progress that you guys are making on the MMO?
Yeah, so one of the things we're working on right now pretty hard is the lore side of things, trying to architect out the kind of flow of where everything is going to go. The engineering is kind of, we need this specific tool to make the quests kind of work the way they're going to. They're pretty complex in this game in terms of how predicates work and how one quest leads to another, because people are going to be making real choices in the game, and that's really different from any other MMO that's been out there. So we need to architect that all out in order to make sure that we give engineering the kind of examples that we need to get those tools ready to go.
Right, and we have a unique, and something that you as players will see in the Alpha 1 that people participate in, is, we have to make sure that we structure the quest lines in a way that don't predetermine where the largest focal point of activity will be. Uh-oh.
What did you say, Margaret?
In order that we do not seed the structure across all servers. The whole aspect of something that's unique about Ashes of Creation is that from the world development standpoint, these NPCs, the towns that arise, the quest lines that become available to players, is something that's based on the player agency, the player choice, the community's direction as a whole. And while that sort of direction can be determined differently on different servers based on what, let's say, racial populations and or starting points that players may begin in, one additional component, as Jeff was describing with regards to the questing, is that there needs to be a variance of questing that doesn't always take you to point A, B, but rather, could be time session based, could be additive number of players that have participated in certain quest lines, and then you'll see some adaptive changes in those quests based on those things.
Yeah, so in order to do that, we have to kind of figure out where we're going with the story and what options we want to present to you. So that's kind of what we've been working on right now. It's been a lot of fun. It's my wheelhouse, so it's been a lot of really exciting thing to work on. So
I know you guys have been making some tools internally to try to make sure that those things work properly and kind of playing through the storylines, and there's a lot of story. Many documents.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff to write.
Yeah,
but yeah, we work from the high level first, and then we get down to the nitty gritty as time goes on.
And if you watched our Extra Life live stream, we did kind of show off some of the story
Super
there.
cool.
I think we're thinking about how we want to show the last end of part of that story. So we might do a whole video that incorporates all of those things. So stay tuned for that going down the line. So I think that's all you got.
That's me.
For the design. So we're going to move over onto our engineering,
Jeff.
which is going to talk quite a bit about some other Castle Siege elements as well, which is with Alex. You remember Alex?
Hello, friend.
So Alex, tell us a little bit about what you do on the team for anybody who's new and just tuning in for the first time.
All right, okay. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm a programmer. I've been with the company for almost 3 years now.
Yay!
I basically do system design, system programming, basically developing them, cover different MMO side, also covering APOC side. That's pretty much.
Alex takes a lot of the systems that are meant to be available in the MMORPG from a gameplay standpoint and actually codes them.
Yeah.
Just like the rest of the engineering team.
Yeah. Well, there are more specific engineers, right? Like network engineers, graphical engineers, platform engineers. But then from a gameplay standpoint, you're in the nitty gritty of these systems and mechanics and how they kind of effectually.
And you work really closely with the design team
Correct.
on those things. And if you listen to our previous live streams, which you definitely should go check them out, because we kind of show you all kinds of different things in the progress of development. They also talked a little bit about how you guys met, which was really funny. So let's go into the stuff for this week. I think you wanted to give a little platform information as well, because the platform team has been working on some stuff.
There's a short update. They basically we're working on the authentication, improving it, basically its performance and flow. So I think they're actually going to be deploying it pretty soon. I think this week or next week. So that's good stuff. And then mostly my updates are on the engineering side. So we can
let's move on over to the engineering side, which you do have quite a few things that you want to talk about. So the first thing that you want to talk about was wall destruction.
We've been heavily working on basic Castle Siege systems, and part of it is a wall destruction. So we already had a system designed for APOC to do basic component destruction, and like our houses, where individual piece can be blown up, and then as number of pieces get blown up, the whole structure disappears. This was a little bit different challenge because, as Jeff was mentioning, the chaos system was not yet on par of production yet, so we were not able to heavily rely on it. So we had to kind of create our own system, which basically, in a sense, takes an object and like a Castle Siege wall, and as you damage it, it goes through stages and possibly different randomization seed of stages. So you'll start hitting it, let's say top chips away, and then you hit it more, like let's say below 50%, and then like now the path opens up, smaller path, and then you destroy it, it completely becomes a ruined
Now,
state.
will those paths be specific to the location that you're hitting them at, or will
So
they?
that will be most for design to decide. For us, is mostly functionality then, right? So as they design the way it's gonna crumble and variations of the crumble, that's basically gonna like they're based on their choice.
Right, and then additionally, the destruction system that is being created has to be able to facilitate kind of a building destruction that we might see in node sieges
Correct.
and in the destruction per se of a freehold, perhaps if a node siege loses, right, those freeholds become susceptible. And part of this destruction system that's becoming available now with the castle siege is to facilitate those different state changes between once it hits a hit point threshold to being inaccessible in a partially destructed state or being a fully destructed state. And the ramifications that has on gameplay for, let's say, citizens of a node is, as the attackers are sieging a city, they have obviously a win condition, a win objective, but additionally there can be casualties from a structural standpoint during that process. So let's say if the attackers were to not succeed in completely destroying the node, they could still affect damage across multiple types of buildings that are present within the node, which disable services for those citizens, and also will require some type of reconstruction effort on behalf of the citizens. So making sure that the destruction system is capable of presenting those partially destructed states of those buildings is also one of the components of the feature.
Correct. Yeah. As we design all these systems, we need to make sure they're multi-purpose. It's not only fits one. Right. Especially like this system also could be potentially used for construction, right? So like the same similar mechanics is used for construction, where you go for multiple states, and then as you build out, it becomes the full thing.
And that also, from a design standpoint, that makes city sieges more relevant, not just towards the goal of destroying per se the city. You might not be capable of doing that as an attacker, because that's a significant undertaking. You have to have significant resources and population to do that. But rather, you could be more precision oriented in the decision to attack a city. Let's say it's a rival node that's trying to reach, a node stage 5 or something, and you want to disable their ability for their religious system to progress. So you target the temple during the attack, or you want to disable their scholars academy from reaching a higher level so that your nodes can, or you want to disable multiple buildings that allow for experience and quests to be undertaken by its citizenship, which prevents them from keeping up in pace of experience gain with your node. These can be more precision oriented and don't have to effectualize an actual takeover of the node.
So how would that work from the player standpoint? If like you're like, okay, I want to attack like a specific type of building or progress.
Right, so those buildings are present during the assault, and they take damage just like any other structure. Not all buildings will, because not all buildings will be a service-oriented building where it has questing or organizational importance. You might have just random houses that can't necessarily take damage and be destroyed because they have no significance. But there will be multiple buildings that are within the node's layout that do offer quests and services and interactions and merchants, and those can be targeted with trebuchets, with siege weaponry. They can be targeted by players. There can be placed destruction and bombs that are put there to kind of destroy those buildings. And you can either destroy it down to, as Alex was saying, a partially destructed state, in which obviously that would be visually represented through the destruction mechanics that are being developed now for Castle Siege. You'll see the building take damage, and then you'll see its mesh change to that partial destruction state. You'll know that you've effectively disabled that building. And then when the siege is over, if the node still exists, there will be a repair.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, there will be a repair undertaking by players to gather the resources, similar to when it was first constructed, gather the resources to basically rebuild it.
Okay,
yeah.
So you lose the resources that were used to
Right.
create the building, and now you have to like re-put them in.
Absolutely.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, moving on from that, because that was a lot, but
Yeah.
I think I know that basically you're building that back end of a lot of those things, and that doesn't even just, like you said, it's not only going to hit, just to kind of recap that, it's not only going to affect destruction, but it can affect a lot of the
Sure.
other systems in place.
Sure.
Speaking of another system, we have the siege weapon systems and
So,
the player
yeah.
seats and how
Yeah.
those work.
Yeah, so as you have seen, we've had some primarily like siege videos where you can kind of enter the siege vehicle and drive around. So the big system of that we had to build is visibly put you like in kind of the seat that like, so when you enter, instead of just become one with the trebuchet, become one ballista, you can actually have
See your person.
Yeah, you have you can see basically a character and the ability for other players to potentially damage it. So for example, you can have a person on ballista, and then let's say a sniper snaps you off, and then basically you'll die, you'll detach, and then someone else can get on. So you kind of like, instead of like destroying the actual siege weapon, you can
Attack the player.
prevent them from attacking by just removing the player element out of it. So yeah, that system was very interesting to design. There's a lot of interesting things we learned about how the possession happens and attachment happens between them, more on the technical side, but yeah.
Yeah, and on those siege weapons, there's also some of them have secondary weapons that you can have a secondary player sitting in your vehicle,
Yeah.
and they can kind of help protect you from the snipers. So their job is to be like, okay, I'm protecting the ballista or whatever the
Correct.
vehicle is, and then your job is to kill things with this powerful vehicle.
Yes.
It's kind of an interesting system.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing that you're working on was the siege weapon boxes.
So yeah, our team also like worked on so
And
the,
deploying items.
yeah, so like basically for trebuchets, we were thinking, design was requesting basically an interactable system where you can interact with an item like a box, pick it up, carry it, and then carry it, for example, towards the trebuchet, and refill the ammo.
I want to be able to hire a troll to carry it for me.
Yeah, the other thing could be also potentially is the similar functionality for interactable, which is you pick up the box, and then as you pick up, you have this layout of deployable trebuchet, and then as you carry it, you want, like, for example, go to a specific spot and then say like, okay, I'm gonna deploy this trebuchet here, and then we're gonna have a cast time or like production time, and then it will appear, and then other people can use it or you can use it.
And I mean, these boxes represent, so as objectives are taken, these boxes will spawn, these ammo crates will spawn.
Correct.
To kind of simulate what would be supply lines. As you make progress in your objective, you are now creating these supply lines to support your war effort at that location. So these boxes spawn. When players pick them up, they entered into an encumbered state where they kind of move a little bit slower. They're easier to pick off. And you have to kind of strategically move these supplies across the battlefield, whether they be siege weapons, whether they be ammunition for siege weapons. But it is a perilous venture on behalf of the players to move these supplies across the battlefield.
And then, Stephen, how do you foresee like this system being utilized in the MMORPG beyond just the sieges?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so. I mean, one thing we want to accomplish, with these types of high combat oriented engagements such as castle sieges or node sieges, is that there is a place for individuals across the tactical map here. It's not just about focusing a giant raid or a zerg into a choke point, but rather it is more strategic in the sense of putting in precision focus on where these supplies need to be, a sort of support structure that individuals or smaller groups can participate in order to effectuate change on the battlefield. And that's part of really what the system accomplishes in the MMORPG, not just the only system that targets that type of effect, but this in particular allows for groups of people to be instrumental in supporting the larger overall strategy of the engagement.
And then we have a question from the chat, which is from Chayoko954, who wants to know, how will the destruction mechanics work with the custom building tool? Do they work together and play nice? So the custom building tool is the tool that we had showcased before, which is kind of showing how the node buildings pop up and are created, as well as the creation of buildings and how they're like kind of dynamic. And we can kind of create all these different types of buildings.
I was totally distracted by reading somebody say that it would be the Tolnar's job to take these crates across the battlefield.
I think the trolls should take them across the battlefield.
Well, I think that's why they kept saying
the trolls like they like explosives and like fireworks and stuff like that.
I need to clarify that the Tolnar, this is a question that was asked to me last week, were the Talnar a result of corruption in their creation, or was it purely a kind of crossbreeding between the multiple minor and major races that existed in the Underrealm during the after the apocalypse? They are not a result of corruption. So there is no corruption that was taken into account during their creation. So I noticed in Discord and other parts of our community that they've somewhat become a pariah of the other players, but they are very unique and don't deserve to be that pariah. So.
He's just saying this because he got turned into one.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah. If you watched our Extra Life Pathfinders show,
I was a Talnar fox.
Yeah,
That's true.
Someone paid to donate to change him into one.
Yep.
So I'll ask the question again, which is, how will destruction mechanics work with the custom building tool? Do they work together and play nice? So this was the creation of buildings that the dynamic tool that we have for building.
So the dynamic tool is meant to answer the bigger content problem that is in creating a diverse landscape of these types of structures across the nodes, so that nodes don't look too similar or the same as you come across them throughout the world, right? We want a way for our environment artists to have a large disposal in front of them of unique buildings, and that's what that tool really accommodates. Does that mean that we're not going to have one-offs and more curated, required buildings? No, we absolutely will, but this kind of answers the bulk of it.
And then the question really is, how does destruction incorporate with that, or do those two things work together in any way?
Absolutely, yeah. So these sets are created in a modular fashion. So environment kind of creates the method that they want to employ destruction within these modular sets, whether that's brought down to the base piece of the modular set and there's a destructed state for that piece, or whether or not they fuse those finished pieces together into one building and then create a destructed state of that building. Really, that I think they're going to be testing. I think they're testing currently both methods right now to see how that's going to play out.
I think they're looking at performance primarily.
Absolutely.
So either one works. It's like performance-wise, which one do you make work?
And right now, what APOC really allowed us to do is, APOC was kind of the epitome of the least performant aspect of how that can be the case, because each individual piece was destructible in those buildings. So it was, a collection of multiple actors. Whereas, the way we're going to address it in the MMORPG is fusing that into one actor that has multiple states based on a threshold of hit points, and that's really going to be able to accomplish, I think, a more performance setting in the MMORPG.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that you're already working on as well on the back
yes.
end. So Be Seen is, I read that as one word. Be Seen is wondering, will there be friendly fire from explosions in sieges?
Will there be friendly fire from explosions? Mm-hmm. There will not be friendly fire on teams from specific projectiles that might emanate from siege weapons or other players. However, there could be occurrences where a siege projectile hits a wall and there is a debris AoE that maybe occurs around that wall, and that could damage all players. Not necessarily from the projectile, but from the state change, there could be like an explosion that's an AoE, that if you're around that area, you could be damaged, yes. But not specifically from players or projectiles that the players have.
All right, and then I want to move on to the next topic for you, because I know we still have a lot more to go through. We still have a lot of questions to answer too. Is control points and fast travel functionality.
Yeah, so one of the design requests we had is, for example, we have respawn points, but if the map is pretty large and there is, let's say, 5 to 8 control points, there needed an ability to fast travel between them, so that, let's say, you have just respawned and you want to go back into the battlefield as soon as possible, instead of walking, for 5 minutes, then, interacting with the enemy and then dying and then repeating. We allow you a sense of basically able to move between one point to another. Obviously, there's caveats to that, whether, like, let's say, a control point will be contested or not. Those all still under design, but the base functionality for it is, being developed and pretty much done. We actually also almost finished with UI elements for that, so that the big map brings up showing you where all the control points are and whether you can teleport to them or not. That's also been part of the work that our UI engineer is doing.
And this type of control point fast travel This is something we're going to test with sieges to see how it impacts the overall flow of combat, whether or not it's too powerful to allow groups to quickly traverse large expanses in the siege map. But I mean, it does place an emphasis on just how important control points are, because not only do they provide those supply routes that we've discussed in addition to certain buffs and respawn timers, but now they also provide a significant amount of mobility across the battlefield. And that, as we know, many of us who participated in these types of large combat, is probably the most important tool that could be associated with the control points.
Correct. Yeah, it plays in very heavily in the way you play Castle Siege.
All right. And then moving on to our leaderboard system and stat tracking. So I know players have been asking about this in the VR mode for Apocalypse, but also it is something that we're going to need for the MMO and for a lot of other elements of all of our games.
Sure.
So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a few of our engineers have been working on leaderboards, which is basically a stat tracking from gameplay. We've been integrating different backend services to basically collect the data and aggregate it and present it to the player, which basically the front end of UI. Yeah, I mean, it's we're pretty much done with it. I think we're potentially going to have it roll out very, very soon. It does have a different type of aggregates, for example, per mode, per region, and it's important to be able to segment that, because let's say once we have our MMO and our arena instance team, for example, comes up, we'll be able to say, hey, who's like has the top kill death ratio, who's the best in the region for this class, who's the best healer, and etc. So yeah, that's the whole system is I think very important to gamers, especially who enjoy PvP. But
guild leaderboard.
yeah, so then let's say it's not necessarily going to be limited to PvP. If we have like sort of achievements or achievement hunters, it's going to be great too. Like we have a leaderboards of how many achievement points you have, or if we ever get.
And those will be partitioned based on part of that regionality and the base functionality that's being presented now in the leaderboard implementation is establishing the foundation for how we will implement that in the MMORPG, having it segmented by server, having it segmented by even potentially race, whatever type of partitions we want to put in there that give granularity when players can see kind of their position in the overall population of their server and how they perform against other players.
Yeah, and the collection of that data that we're pulling on the back end, which is a whole other thing, right?
Correct, and then it basically leads to the last engineering point that we have about how this whole all services that we have to because they're basically they're not main engine services; they are third-party services that we create. Basically, we optimizing and installing those services. That was very heavy effort on that part, especially optimization part of it, because collecting all that data and transferring it to the servers could potentially affect the gameplay on the server, and then we want to make sure that our servers, ticking pretty fast and doesn't create lag or have issues with incoming or outgoing traffic. So that's was very important for us too.
I mean, so much of what the engineering team has ahead of them, from a problem-solving standpoint, is MMORPGs, as you guys know, is a very, very, very difficult game to make, because there's a lot of unique problems that exist within MMOs that don't exist within other games. And there's a lot of core functionality that doesn't come out of the box with a commercial engine like Unreal Engine 4. Although it's an amazing engine and has amazing tools and support, there are custom solutions that have to be created in order to make sure that, from an optimization standpoint, we are able to facilitate a large number of players on single servers and able to play with one another in an open world environment.
Yeah, and our engineering team is working very hard on doing a lot of things for us. But I want to wrap this up with one last question from our chat, which is Scooter Pewter, who wants to know, will you migrate to the Chaos system when it's ready, or will you be going forward with your custom destruction system? And what is special about Chaos? I don't know if you can talk on that front a little bit about it.
I mean, we can talk about it. I mean, current system, I think, so the biggest problem is it's a physics-based system, and then physics-based system is very, very hard to implement in MMORPGs, because
you have like a large space.
Yeah, because it's a lot of, not only that, but it's a lot of polygons, so not only you have like hundreds of people in your screen, now you have to also display all those destructible polygons and the way it's generates, and it also needs to be synchronized against basically among all other players. So yeah,
On the client side, everyone needs to see the same
so
thing.
yeah, the biggest challenge is basically all those points, and I mean, we're gonna be continue looking at the chaos system and seeing how far it goes. But right now, it's very like basically it's baby state, where it's just like
Did you
have
say
like
baby or beta?
baby,
Oh,
baby
baby.
state.
Baby.
Yeah, it's like you have to hold.
There's a lot of promise, I think, when it comes to chaos. I don't think it was created to be specifically for massively multiplayer games. It's something that's more related to creating this really cool-looking procedural kind of destruction that's good in a single player or a very small small group game. Whether or not that it can be up to the spec of performance that we need it to be for an MMORPG, that's something that needs to be determined later as it gets fleshed out more. Like Alex said, it's in a baby state right now, or beta state. It was just rolled out with the most recent engine from Unreal. So we're not gonna move forward specifically with that right now. We have our own kind of custom solution we're going to do, but obviously we'll be keeping tabs on how it develops.
Yeah. And potentially, even if it doesn't fit our needs, we could potentially have small pieces that uses it, that utilize it to demonstrate or just to highlight certain features.
But on our front, we're always looking at all of that tech and seeing how we can integrate things in that sort. And obviously, we need to move quickly. So sometimes we're like, okay, well, this isn't in a state where we're ready to use it yet. So that's why we've moved on and we've designed our own system. So thank you so much for joining us, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to our character art. And we actually have Chris joining us for character and environment. So he'll be covering both of those topics. And we have a fancy new overlay for this one. But first, we'll let him kind of introduce himself.
Hello, guys.
Hi, how are you? Have you missed us?
I did. It's been, when was the last time I was on? Like 6 months ago, probably.
Oh my God.
I feel like it's been a long time.
I don't think it's been that long, but maybe it
long?
feels like that long. So kind of tell the audience who maybe is, if they're new to our live streams and they haven't checked this out before, who you are.
I am the,
What you do here?
I'm Chris Atkins. I'm the lead character artist, basically just kind of wrangling all the creatures and all the little doodads that run around and
All
helping out.
doodads.
Yeah, all of them. And yeah, helping out animation where I can and stuff. But the animation character team is kind of just one big
Someday we'll get
team.
Chris Myers on.
Yeah, he'll never. I know. I
He's
just told him.
amazing, but he's just like, he doesn't want to be on camera.
Yeah, we got Keith comes on a lot. I think
People
because
really want Jinsey on.
I
too.
know they do, but Keith has a low resting pulse, so he can come on here no problem.
very
Everybody
chill,
else is like, I don't want to be on camera. It's all right.
Yeah, and I don't want to force people on camera who don't want to,
No.
but I know our community really wants to. So maybe you'll see them in videos because I think that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. Like you've seen
Post-production stuff,
Carson probably before in a couple of videos. His
Yeah.
favorite dry mouth video. He's like, if I could talk to future me, I would give myself a glass of water.
I think we gave him a glass of
You
water.
did, I know.
but
It's all right. It's how
he needed
recording
more
goes.
water. Yeah. So we're gonna go over all of the wonderful things that you have brought us today,
Yes.
and the first thing is talking a little bit about the Servant of the Soil, and you actually worked on this.
Yeah. This is.
And so this is a monthly cosmetic item that you guys have seen before. So if we could go ahead and swap over to that asset, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was actually, I had a ton of fun doing this. I've really been in a lot of player character stuff in armor sets for the last, I don't know, while of development. Yeah. And I mean, we've been sneaking creatures in here and there. I just haven't got to do that many. So yeah, I had a really nice time sculpting this. It was fun. Again, Jinsey and the whole team, Carson, Keith, everyone really collaborative. So everyone gave me a ton of feedback during the whole sculpt process. So
I had a really fun time designing this this month because this month was very clerical and nature oriented.
Yeah.
So it was really fun to do, and you guys made it come to fruition, and it's amazing.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of the design stuff that's been coming in for the cosmetics is awesome. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And yeah, we're just kind of hammering it out. I mean, our main focus right now has been
I like that he has defined butt cheeks.
He does. Yeah, I had to.
Those are called bark cheeks.
Those are bark cheeks. Yeah. There's been a lot with this guy with moss placement and other things. Yeah, it's in a lot of
The concept
scrutiny.
art had it too, so it's
The concept has it in there. Look.
Yeah. There's the concept art for it.
Yeah, it was really fun though. We have a lot of great artists here, driving style. So it's pretty easy when you get stuff like this to just sculpt.
Someone said he missed log day.
He did miss log day. Look at him. Look at his little stumps.
He even has like the little essence stuff coming out of his
Yeah,
body, so
I
it's
still
cool.
try to follow like kind of human anatomy even when
Yeah.
making creatures. So you still try to hit all those muscle groups and parts. But yeah, it was really fun to do. Yeah, I think my team actually approves of something I did for once. It's good. It's good. It's good.
I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this creature at all, Stephen.
Yeah, I think it's, one of the things that is really cool about this little guy is, like all of our cosmetic pets that we've had available, he's just going to follow around, your character and kind of hang out with you. And it's going to be interesting to see what type of, ancillary effects like this. He sprout little flowers off of him. Do roots start to grow out of his feet?
Yeah, I want little lightning bugs coming out of his head and stuff. Like just neat ambient.
It's going to be fun to see effects kind of get a hold of this and play around with that.
And I think animation has got it, and they're going to start working
Yeah,
on it.
they have it now. And speaking of modularity, I think we've been talking about a lot on all the teams. Basically this was constructed as like a torso, and all those parts, the head, arms, and legs, could all be swapped. So we're really trying to think about variation going forward, especially we're making MMOs.
I mean, exactly, as you know, because you've done a lot of them, right?
Yep.
Having that reusability in a way that answers the question of a lot of different types of creatures that we want to have, and making sure that this can branch out, no pun intended, to a lot of different uses.
Yeah. Well, hopefully y'all are enjoying that. We'll probably show off some of the animations in maybe next month's live stream, or so on and so forth, depending on how far along they are with
they're starting to rig it right now.
So let's move to the War Beast, which this is another Jinsey creation.
Yeah, this
which
one's
is,
fantastic.
out of her head, right?
Yes.
What? I want to live in her head.
Yeah,
she makes so many amazing things.
It's probably small though.
Yeah, it's very tiny.
Because she's small.
Yeah, look at it.
This is not small.
Giant.
This guy's big.
He's huge.
Again, with reusability, we basically have a lot of like rhino type skeletons and things coming up.
Yeah.
So this was one where she's sort of been living off of a lot of concepts because we have so many, and then she sort of had an idea about Siege, watching Lord of the Rings and all the stuff we have, and she was like, "Oh, I'd love to make this big beast," and I was like, "Yeah."
When she was showing it to me, I was like, "Oh, I know." What
You literally called out what it was, which is great because that's what she was going for.
I know.
Yeah, it's really nice to see her sort
There
of.
has been a lot of discussion about how big this is, because she was envisioning it like bigger than an or like
Oh,
more
she wants to keep
elephant-sized.
scaling it up. Yeah, she wants a person
and
the size
Steven's
of the
like,
toenail.
No.
Well, I didn't say no per se. I just said that it could only be the scale she wanted it to be in a specific setting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Pulling
but
siege weapons.
But obviously, part of what character goes through is creating these kind of master segments of parameters in which these different mounts and or creatures can exist in that make sense from an environment standpoint, like going through doors or from
Can you imagine that thing going through doors?
No.
No, this
that
is
would
going to take your city
Kool-Aid
out.
Man,
Yeah, exactly.
Kool-Aid Man through the door.
Oh yeah.
This is the Node Destroyer. Yeah, it's Mr. Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, I think you on the screen, you can see kind of just going through her speed sculpt of everything. But yeah, just gave her a little direction on basically keep a rhino proportion so we can reuse the skeleton and then have fun with it. And that's exactly what she did. So it was really nice to see her go off concept. I mean, she's a great artist.
And she made like the saddle, or not the saddle, but like the reins that hold it
all the
together,
yoke and the
everything.
barding and everything like that. Yeah, because Chris Myers, the lead animator, he wanted to make sure it had sort of attachment points. So if we do hook it up, or drag things.
Because it's going to be used to kind of like pull siege weaponry and stuff.
Yeah,
That
it
is
could
the thought
be.
process.
I think our plan is sort of ambient for now, but it could definitely be used in multiple facets.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's a really nice piece.
Someday we'll get Jinsey on.
We'll get her on. I keep
maybe.
asking. You're the one that's going to have to talk her into it. She likes you. I feel like you could get her in here.
Or maybe it'll be a video thing that we
I
can
could always
get her
just
on.
voluntold her. Just
I don't like to do that.
Get on there.
And then we have another dragon that we were going to show
We
off.
do.
So you guys have seen kind of wormling dragons. This is an elder dragon that is being worked on. And this is another creation from Keith's head.
Yep.
Which Keith is, you've seen him on the stream here before. He's very chill, but he's
He's
also
great.
amazing.
Yeah. We're very lucky. All the character artists are very creature oriented and they love it. I mean, Jinsey knows so much about everything. Birds. She's like, well, I have birds. I have this pet. I have this. So she knows so much about everything. And Keith's exactly the same way, where he loves characters. He loves creatures, and he loves just design. He likes concept to kind of give him a little direction, but he
Yeah.
loves making up stuff. And yeah, this thing's great.
Now
Just
this
kinda-
guy is massive. This
Yes.
is a character would likely come up about maybe a toe size on him because
Yeah,
this
we
is
wanted this to be a massive
big
elder
boss
dragon.
Fight. Yes, exactly. And seeing, I remember when I used to play Lineage 2, and the first boss I fought in Lineage 2 was Antheris, and Antheris was this huge boss, and huge boss. And I thought that was so cool because you would see 100+ people running around in that, and he just dwarfed everybody, and it was a really fun experience. So having something that's super big like this guy is very cool.
Yeah, I think
excited.
he did a really nice job, and it's got a lot of like the quality of like Elder Scrolls dragons and stuff. And yeah, if Keith had his way, it would be one guy running at that with a sword. That's the game he wants to make.
So fun story. Back in Lineage 2, that fight with Antheris, would take upwards of like 6 hours back in the original C2 days. And I was playing a bishop, and we had an enemy alliance that went to go fight Antheris, and there was I was in the raid with them, and I left the raid, and it took like 6 hours, like I said. But in Lineage, it took like, I would say 6 hours to get a percent at like max level, right? So it was like a significant amount of time. And when you died, you would lose like 4% unless you got res by a healer. Well, I was playing a bishop, and I was kind of a spy in that. And after about 5 hours of fighting the boss, and it was down to like 3%, I left the raid and cast Restore Life on the boss and brought it back up to like 8.
You jerk. Why would you do that?
Because they were my enemy alliance. I'm not going to let them get the drops from that. But
Now I know why you're making your own game. Now I know.
That was like, it was so
Oh my
cool.
goodness.
I was like 18 or 17 or something. But yeah, it was fun.
So good.
Dude, so bad.
So bad. I flagged and died though.
Yeah, lost that experience. They did change the
Yes.
experience later down the line to make it less
it was like
harsh.
1%. They moved from 4% to 1%.
It was really harsh back in the day. Now moving on to the troll creature, which you have seen a lot of progression of him.
I can't get over
You
this.
got to see him in the modeling phase, you've seen him in the concept phase, and now you're getting to see kind of like the mesh.
Yeah, he's texturing and getting the
texture,
materials
yeah.
on. Like you can see the light kind of passing through the ears. Like it's
so-
called subsurface scattering. It's all just
He's so
technical
creepy,
stuff.
but I
But
love
yeah, Carson, this was perfect for him. I mean, he's a funny, silly guy, and I think his Pinterest board was just the most ridiculous thing you've ever
when he was
seen.
looking at
His reference, because we kept telling
him.
him like, make him kind of gross and lesions and boils and stuff.
He
so
looks like he's seen some shit.
he has seen some shit. Yes,
eyes
yes, he
are
definitely
like-
has.
He looks like he's
Holding.
seen some shit.
But I was
Well,
just delighted every time.
That's
I see
because,
this
like,
thing.
whenever we grab the models from the model thing, like, their eyes aren't, like, moving around. So all of the models always look like
Yes,
they're-
we have a lot of
like,
dead
yeah,
face
dead
in the
face.
beginning because we have to tier A-pose them to start so animation can rig everything without a bunch of
so
angles.
when you're seeing those things, like, that's the reason why, but also it's more comedic on this guy than...
No, it is because his eyes are huge and Carson had originally modeled this huge smirk in, and I'm like, no, you have to neutralize it and then Animal bring it back. So he's so excited to see it walking around. I don't think we threw any animals in, but he's got quite the swagger when he walks.
So when I got the concept art for this originally, he didn't have a smile on his face, and I was like, he looks like he's gonna go like murder people with those
he looks
fireworks.
psychotic.
Yeah, and so like they added a smile to him. I'm like, okay, maybe now he looks like he's joyously going.
Didn't I say to take his smile away? And then we looked at it, and he was like really weird.
Yeah.
He looked scary. Like he looked. I was
We
like,
should have a nighttime version where he doesn't smile.
Oh, we can definitely do. Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get Minnie McP up there. Just tell him whatever idols you
they're
want.
supposed to be
He gets like
joyous.
a shiv at night, and he
No.
doesn't smile. But in the day, he's like happy.
No, he's supposed to.
We should just give him the balloon.
No, they're supposed to.
And we should also have a cosmetic animation where when you're fighting a monster, he just runs up and goes psycho and like starts stabbing it.
Oh yeah, I have a lot
Right.
of thoughts. Come upstairs.
Yes.
Let's deliver our thoughts to Minnie McP. Let's go.
No. Oh my gosh. He's supposed to be bringing you fireworks and joy.
He is. He
Oh, yeah.
brings me nothing but joy all the time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Moving on, we have our Tide Snapper.
Yes.
Which, you've probably seen concept art of, but this thing is so good. I love turtles.
Yeah, and this is another one of Carson, and he's sort of rounding out right now. He's working on the saddle and adding hair and stuff. So these shots are sort of in progress, but this was closer to the end of him getting to texturing.
Yeah,
So this is the first
Aquatic.
modeled aquatic mount that you guys have seen,
Well,
right?
otters. The
Otters are not aquatic.
Yeah,
No, they're land
I guess it's
animals.
not an otter. But
Yeah,
it's
this
like
one
a-
is all.
This one's
Same.
only in the water,
Only in
so
the
you
water.
can summon him when you're in the water, and he will go underwater and be above water for you, but not on land.
Yeah, we're just starting to
Yeah, I
really.
don't imagine going on land with those flippers.
You
It's
could.
gonna-
Maybe when you summon him on land, he can't move, and he just kind of flaps.
No.
Yeah, you could have them up. Like our thought is that once you dive into some body of water for those underwater quests, this is what whatever. If you're
He's gonna
riding
go
a horse
faster,
on
yeah.
land and then you have this
Right.
one in your inventory, then
Yeah.
you just swap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about swap.
Oh, is it not? I
No,
don't
you
know.
have to summon them differently. So, like, you'll have your mounts in your inventory, and then you'll activate the mount to bring it up. And
okay.
you will only maybe you can bring this up on land, but if he's on land, he just
He
flaps.
just
right?
No,
Yeah.
that's so cruel.
That's
great.
Maybe he lays some eggs.
On land.
On land.
I know. Well, we have
Right.
that animal husbandry, so
Yeah.
let's do it.
Chris's face when he was thinking about that, because we've been talking about like Tolnar and animal husbandry and like how those systems are going to work and like how those creatures are going to be created, and it's been interesting.
My head just caves in on itself. I'm like, no, it'll be fine. We'll get it working. Don't worry.
It's getting there. So I think that's it. That's all the things
Yeah,
for character
that was
art. We're gonna
really it
move
for
on to
character.
environment art, which Chris is gonna kind of take over because Bacon is not. His little one's not feeling good, so he had to go back
Yeah, he's-
home. So we were planning on having him here, but Chris has valiantly offered to take on the task of talking over these things. So the first one is the Junior node concepts. You've been seeing some of the concept art for all of the nodes that we're creating and
Yeah.
the different tiers of them. So I don't know if you want to
So
talk
this
about
is kind of
this.
giving you guys, a look at the mood pieces for these Junior architectural standpoints in what will be Junior nodes. Obviously, these are being created in the same fashion using, that design tool for environment as well as a modular, set for creating these. But it gives you an idea of what that node kind of architectural influences will look like from a Junior standpoint.
Yeah. And so this is the secondary one. You can even see some dwarves in there.
Yeah.
If you're looking close enough.
Yeah, and the idea here is to kind of, represent that industrial nature in the, components of these buildings, but also, keeping them agrarian in the aspect that, they have to still manage livestock and, grow crops and stuff like that.
Are these posted up for? Can they look at these and click and zoom in on them as well?
Not yet, but we will be providing them.
It
with
would just
some-
be
some-
neat because
yeah.
these pieces are so amazing.
Yeah.
Like Stephen was saying, like if you just focus and look at them, you just notice all these little details.
We post a lot of things to our Instagram later, so definitely check those things out. And then also we will be releasing kind of lore pieces and things of that sort
Right.
that will incorporate some of these. So stay tuned.
Yeah,
it's
and
beautiful.
these who made these? Were these Ryan?
Ryan
Yeah.
Richmond. Yeah, Ryan Richmond made these great examples of just kind of setting the mood and composition for how these nodes will look.
Yeah, he's
Like
got
how
a great
the
eye.
environment will look and
Right.
how the buildings will sit on them. It's just
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah, his composition stuff is always really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, is that the last one on that one?
Yep.
Yes. So now we're going to move on to the Dwarven Castle Siege map. So you have been seeing some images of the Castle Siege map. You saw some destruction. Now you're going to get a few more shots of like different areas in the environment that they're creating. I mean, I don't know if Stephen wants to talk a little bit about like the design direction in some of these as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you guys know, in the MMORPG, there are 5 castles that will be present on the map, and one of these castles will be an original Dungeon Kell castle. We call it the Junior Castle map, but really these castles are remnants of the old world, pre-apocalypse that, as you re-enter Vera, you'll be taking back. So, this particular siege map that will be present in our siege testing in Apocalypse will be representative of the set that's used to create the castle in the MMORPG. So the idea here is to have, a composition that blends into the side of a mountain, because, traditionally that's where the Dinsenkel dwarves originated from before they split off into the Dunir and the Nikua. But what you see here is that more traditional type stone-facing, mountain-esque incorporated castle structure. So these look very, very good.
Yeah, you're coming along.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be battling this, so that'll be very exciting. I know they did start out with a little bit of some, basically on the design front too, they did some like white boxing or gray boxing of areas. So they were like, here's how we want the design to look. And then they were taking all the pieces and elements that they have created from the dwarven race structure, and then placing those in those places and making sure those catwalks are where they need to be, and making sure that those walls are where they need to be placed in order to make the combat feel really good. And we've been testing all of those things out, and there might be some structural issues that might need to be moved in those playtesting phases. Because obviously we do want spaces where you can kind of snipe down from, or snipe from above, or jump from above, or things of that sort. So
the other important aspect about this particular map that you're seeing is, as you guys are probably aware, in the MMORPG, each of the 5 castles will have 3 support nodes around them that are not integrated into the traditional node structure of the world from a development standpoint, but rather exist to serve the defenses and abilities of that particular castle in the MMORPG. They can only reach stage level 3, and the guild that occupies the castle is going to be responsible for ensuring that they grow during the prerequisite weeks to the siege. So 3 of those, if there's 4-week intervals between sieges in the MMORPG, week 1 we'll see node A need to be developed, week 2 we'll see node B, and week 3 we'll see node C, and then you'll have the 4th week with the castle siege. And based on the success of that occupying guild, in order to forge alliances and partnerships with other communities within the game, they can lead trade goods and resources into those nodes to build them up. And each week that node needs to be built up, enemies of the guild can participate in attempting to destroy those support nodes in order to reduce the defense capabilities of the castle during the siege.
all right, and that's going to kind of wrap up our environment stuff. So thank you again, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm actually going to be stopping out as well, and we're going to welcome on your community manager, which is the wonderful Lieutenant Toast. And of course, Jeff is going to be returning.
Bring Jeff back in
and
with me.
he will answer all the questions.
Margaret.
Oh, greetings. Happy Friday, everyone.
Welcome,
Everyone's doing well.
Toast.
Thanks. I was hanging out and chat with some people earlier. We were having a pre-party. We were enjoying all of the creatures and environments we were looking at.
We love parties.
People were really loving that dragon, by the way.
Dragon's
Yeah.
Like, well, I
badass.
want a 3D model of that, and I was like, yes, I would love one at my
The
desk.
dragon
I
is
want
pretty
a statue
cool.
on my desk of that one, please.
You can probably
Someone
do
want
that,
to 3D
actually.
print it?
Yeah.
I think someone else.
Let's talk about
We
that.
have some Amateur 3D printers in the office.
Yes.
I believe Roy and Grat they oftentimes bring in kind of stuff that they've
All sorts of
They
really
did,
cool
like-
doodads and
In fact,
widgets.
Grat
and
has
characters.
this like salvo arm or
Yes.
whatever that he's creating for a robot that he's making, and it's really cool when he brings them in. He also brings in some fun like Cthulhu
Yeah.
Yeah,
oriented
like
bosses.
he made a
and stuff.
statue out of it. It was
Yeah,
really
and I
cool.
think he did a Boba Fett one too.
He did.
Yeah.
It's on
But
the Keels desk,
Carson,
I
who
think.
3D prints, also 3D printed a version of the staff that you can
Oh,
get
I saw
in
that.
the
Yeah,
game.
Yeah, that
Carson
one was
did the
really
staff.
cool.
So that's
Which is
fun
cool.
that, you design something in the game and then you're able to make a cool 3D version and be like, look, I made this, both physically and
Somebody said,
in
I
the
thought
game.
it's a hard C in Cthulhu, but I
Cthulhu?
say Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
I say
I always thought
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
You say Cthulhu?
Yeah,
I say Cthulhu. Oh well.
Nobody can pronounce it anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Oh, yeah, it's
supposed to be
everything
some, like,
madness.
ancient
Yes, right,
language,
yes.
right? Some
If you said it right,
crazy-
you're done
Right.
for.
Who knows how
Yeah.
they say it in the deep?
Right.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sure there's no actual letters that correlate
Right.
to it. Anyways, I'm here like I am every month with awesome questions from our community. Thank you guys for submitting your questions. Usually the week before the live stream, we open up a forum thread, let you know we're going to be doing the live stream, and ask you guys to submit your questions for our live Q&A. So thank you guys for doing that. We ask you to only submit one question, please, so that we can make sure to get questions from more of the community. So if you did put more than one question in your post, unfortunately we have skipped over it for this time. So just keep that in mind for the future in case you don't hear an answer to
We
yours
gotta
this
spread out the
time.
love.
Exactly. We're sharing the love with everyone.
Ooh, food's here.
Ooh, what is it today?
It is, I think I ordered urban plates.
Ooh,
Yum.
delicious. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to start with Ventharian's question, who asks, what abilities, or early versions of abilities, will be usable for the classes in Castle Siege? Will it be the same as the BR abilities tied to the weapons those classes could use? So like a halberd, lifesteal for a warrior class.
Right, you'll
like that.
see some of the abilities from the BR make their way over to the Siege. They'll change form a little bit, change numbers, change effectiveness. But by and large, all of the abilities for the classes are new. And, the BR was kind of, we needed useful abilities that were useful all the time. And here in the class system, they are tailored specifically to the classes.
And they are not
so-
tied specifically to a weapon that you have
Right.
equipped. Rather, they're more traditional MMO hotbar type skill that
Right.
you can use.
For sure. Okay. Next up, Magic Man asks, will we have to go through specific quests just to be able to progress or unlock something, as it is the only way to obtain that specific thing? So, i.e. content or ability to progress that is locked behind quests. Or will we have that sandbox freedom, in which case we can do as we please and don't miss much without doing quests? So, like, is there certain content or items that are
Yes.
unlocked behind quest
Yes.
chains?
You will not be able to do everything if you don't do the quests.
Right, and not only that, but you won't be able to do everything if the world composition and development doesn't progress with you as well.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
So if other people are choosing not to do the quests, then
Right.
fine.
Right. Yeah,
Now-
some things are gated behind quests, some things are gated behind node levels, some things are gated behind, unlocking a dungeon. Like there's all sorts of things that gate and change sort of how the world works based on how you do them and what the population is doing.
And that doesn't mean just because something is gated that you cannot do something. The idea is that if something's gated, there's always a predicated activity or something you can do to help unlock and ungate that thing.
All right. Cymex, I love this question, by the way, asks, as a healer, will I have quests that involve me healing hurt NPCs, stopping an epidemic from spreading, or other healer type things, or will I just be another damage dealer when I'm not in a group?
So there's a concept of class quest lines and things like that, and once we start exploring those things, and there'll probably be organizations and things like that, there will be options to complete quests that are not killing things. We want to have optional objectives where you can complete one quest in several different ways.
you could murder hobo,
Yes,
or
you could.
or you could be.
But yeah, the goal is to make sure that like your class feels relevant in what you're doing.
Yep. And that your choices that matter, and how you decide to play, whatever that may
Right.
be. You can be that friendly neighborhood cleric to everyone. All right, Sunfrog asks, will Castle Siege be integrated into the BR, and in this case I assume that it means Apocalypse, or will it be a separate downloadable game?
No, it would be integrated into Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So you will choose an Apocalypse, Castle Siege, BR. So we'll see it that way. Koresh asks, it was mentioned before that you plan to provide API access for game information. Will it be a REST API covering common public stuff like items, region info, auctions? And will it be protected to manage character and account settings? So they were just asking for more details on API stuff. Because I
we're
think
not
back
quite
in the
there
past,
yet. I know it's going to be very limited in terms of what you're going to be able to grab.
Right.
We don't want you grabbing quest data beforehand. We don't want you
Right.
grabbing, node information or dungeon information. So it's still, we're quite a long ways from getting all that stuff implemented. So we don't have answers for that right yet.
Hiram asks, what type of gold sinks, not necessarily just item sinks, but gold sinks in general, have you planned for the game to keep the economy in check? Because I know you guys have talked about some item sinks before in terms of durability and loss.
Yeah, so in addition to that, we have this idea of a dynamic economy, right? So that quest rewards and NPC shopkeepers and things of that nature change their prices, both on the buying and selling side, dynamically based on what the economy is doing, so that we have, a throttle that we can use there. Trying to think of some of the
The other thing
things
is that
we've got.
generally, as we implement resource cost-based systems, they will have a gold component cost associated with those as well.
Yeah.
So the construction of, let's say, buildings, the deployment of buildings, the taxation of nodes and citizenship, the taxation of particular organizations and/or even tithing in the religious systems. There's a lot. The idea behind, the kind of closed economic system that we want to have in the game is to incorporate a significant amount of syncs so that there is a reliance built upon the crafting organizations of the World of Crafting players and players who can sustain that economy, so to speak.
Yep.
Very cool. All right, Shays asks, we've seen early iterations of the ping system in Apocalypse with the ability to place markers using the middle mouse button. Are there any plans to expand on this system to add additional functionality, such as a ping wheel, so I guess, you know, with some directions in it, or raid leader pings and more?
Absolutely. So, I mean, anytime you see kind of, implementation of, gameplay systems through either Apocalypse or in the Alpha 1s, and or 2, you're going to see those from a core feature set, a core functionality standpoint, and many of those systems get expanded upon for their end goal type feature set. One of which is absolutely the ping system and directional command systems and waypoints.
Yeah, we want grouping to be easy, and we want leaders to be able to organize and communicate quickly with their parties. So that's something that we're still exploring, and we're still developing more tools to help people do that.
Damocles asks, will secondary classes still influence your stat growth? And what happens if you change your secondary class?
So secondary classes influencing stat growth.
Yes. I assume maybe adjusting
I don't
how
think they
much of a
do.
cap
We
in
weren't
any
planning on
direction.
Yeah, I don't think that secondary class.
It would be through sort of how the augments integrate with passives. They might do some things, but they certainly aren't planning to directly influence that growth.
I know originally, very early on, we did have plans to incorporate stat changes based on your secondary class choice. I remember when we were originally talking about how your primary archetype would influence whether or not your mental stats and or physical stats get certain bonuses along leveling, and then that can change and you can get augmented stats. But I think we moved away from that recently, the past half year or so, when implementing the waterfall stats for Alpha 1.
Yeah, they're already so complex, and they're already they do what we want them to do that it's not really necessary. There's so many options with regards to armor and equipment and passives and all that stuff to sort of customize your stats that adding that on top of it is kind of almost another level of chaos it doesn't really need.
Right. But keeping in mind, however, that Alpha is intended to test these decisions.
For sure.
So it's entirely possible, as everything we discuss can change. But yeah.
Yes. No plan survives contact with the enemy. I was watching
Or
World War
with
II.
Alpha.
Or with
players.
I've been watching a lot of World War II documentaries, so I'm picking up on my quotes. Okay, Griffith asks, will there be dangerous flora such as cactus that can be planted and used as a strategic advantage in battle? So a flora as a siege weapon
You
almost,
put
or as a siege
hedgerow
defense.
in front
exactly.
of your we certainly have a plan for that. Not in that sort of way. There will almost certainly
Obstacles.
Right. There will almost certainly be abilities
or on
that
my
are associated.
freehold, could I make a maze out of hedges to prevent
you already
people?
So that might be something you could do, but not sort of on that global scale where it would affect a battle like that.
So you can already see in some of the skills we've implemented in APOC or in Alpha 0 that there are kind of control and command skills that obstruct the battlefield with the wall,
Right.
With fire line, with kind of being able to direct the route of your enemy in a direction you want from an advantage standpoint. Whether or not there'll be plans, probably not.
All right.
And certainly not I'm not going to be a farmer and I'm not going to go plant some seeds.
Right.
And then they will
And
grow.
wait
They will
for the
grow
cactus to
magical
grow.
cactus seeds.
Yeah, that's
a cactus wall.
Well,
That would be very
a way
cool,
for crafters
but
to
it
get
would
it on
also be its
siege
own
If we had a
and gigantic
particular, I was about to say,
system.
we had a particular plant-based class, maybe,
Yes.
but we
Yeah.
don't.
Yes, like an arborist or
Yeah, an
something.
arborist.
All right. Anixum asks, will we be able to toggle off cosmetics for other people? So viewing cosmetics for other people,
Yes.
so we could see only their original gear and their
Yes,
items.
part of the default player appearance that we want to make sure is available to players in order to increase performance during large battles will incorporate reducing other players down to a base poly set that is less taxing on your rendering.
Cool beans. All right. Diggs asks, Other than augments and stats, how does secondary archetype affect a player character? For example, if a guardian and warden use the exact same religious augments instead of subclass augments, would they be functionally the same?
So it
They
would depend.
wouldn't be
It
in
de-
that specific example.
Yeah, well, well, it would depend on your skill choice in your master class. So as you build out and assign your skill points to adopt either passives or active skills, if you were to follow the same path with regards to your skill tree, then yes, they would be effectively the same. But there are other ways in which your secondary class affects your player character. It's not just reduced to your augment choices. There are also going to be other availabilities from a adventuring class development standpoint that you will be able to select from based on your choices in your secondary class.
Gotcha. All right. Wololo asks, it has been said before that animation canceling will not be a thing in combat, but what about canceling channeling? For example, if I'm casting a high value skill and I know it's not going to hit. And what effect might that have on the cooldown?
You can currently cancel channel abilities.
That's kind of base functionality
Yeah, and you'll be able to
with
do
the
so.
ability system.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Soul123 asks, are there going to be secret vendors in the MMO, whether they're like rare or limited time spawn or hidden in a secret location? And if so, what kinds of items might we expect to buy from them?
Well, there will be limited vendors, but the types of items that you might be able to buy from these limited vendors might be specific to organizations that you're a part of, the guild that you might have, specific events that might be available, reagents
Node
and
type.
catalyst
Crafting
types,
components.
crafting components, exactly. These tie into kind of the more immersive and dynamic aspect of how we want players to interact with the game. Those types of NPCs facilitate that type of interaction.
All right. Aaliyah asks, will there be an over-the-top RTS-style spectator mode for Castle Sieges? So a top-down view for Castle Siege.
There will not be an over-the-top perspective for Castle Sieges. There's something we discussed in the past about having, spectator ability where players can plug into watching those, but it won't be a top-down type view.
Right. We want to make sure that people don't get information that they shouldn't have and feed that to whatever team they're looking at it on. So it's important that we maintain
No
the fog of
screen
war.
peeking.
Yeah.
Right.
As well as we can.
Yeah, but battle maps, however, will provide a top-down strategic view, not of real-time player count or positioning, but rather the raid leaders having the under squad leaders having the ability to place down markers, objectives, and waypoints for other players.
Gotcha. Kind of tying back into Shayla's question earlier as well, for raid tools for communication and ping stuff. This next question is from Every Hole, who asks,
Oh my god.
I didn't read the full name for a reason.
I did.
It's written on a piece of paper. They can both read it. When deciding what and how to balance a feature or a skill, how much does community opinion come into play as compared to raw data?
As compared to raw data.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, raw data is kind of like our touch point, right? Like that is the thing that we use to justify a lot of our decisions. But that doesn't mean that we don't listen to community. It's a tough balance, right? Because data is going to tell you one thing and player opinion is going to tell you another thing. And, those things do need to come into an alignment. If players feel like something's wrong, there's likely something wrong that the data's not showing.
Right.
Usually
usually that's the balance between subjective and objective
Right.
data, right? The benefit of the data that we collect is that it doesn't come with an opinion or an anecdote of its use. It's just kind of bland in that sense, and you can derive certain points of information from it without having to take account the source that it comes from. But the benefit of having the ability to give the community the mouthpiece to participate in our development is that we can analyze it from a feeling standpoint, from an enjoyability standpoint. It's just not this raw metric per se, but rather takes into account the the feelings of the players that we're catering to, which is our player base. So there is definitely a level of discernment when it comes to taking into account the anecdotal information we receive from community members, because we want to make sure that we're not listening to a vocal minority, but rather taking into account the kind of feeling of the community as a whole. both have their place. One of the greatest examples of how we utilize player feedback as a data point for us is the community discussions that that Sarah and
They're
Margaret
so good.
The dev
utilize.
discussions?
You know, those are, we're very surprised with the kind of well thought out discussions that are being had, and you know, obviously there's a saying about too many cooks in a kitchen, but at the same time, there is the ability to grant a voice to like-minded you know, players, and to not miss out on potential points of information from those many voices that exist. So those are very helpful. Make sure you guys participate in those. There's a specific discussion thread that I
coming
had
up for
asked
you.
for.
Yep, that one's going to come up in January.
Yes,
for
okay,
you.
very
yes,
good.
We've got
So-
one scheduled for
One more thing I
January.
wanted to say is that
Yeah.
however useful data is, data will never tell you if something's fun.
Right.
Yes.
And so, you know,
Yes.
that's kind of
So true.
where the community comes into play at that point.
Yeah, and us too,
Yeah.
sitting and playing, and I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. Cryprim asks, will we be able to give NPCs orders in a castle or node siege, or will we only fight as players? So can I command NPCs in a castle or node siege, or
Yes,
will
there
I
are
only be fighting as
mercenary.
myself?
There are mercenary NPCs that can be assigned to players. We've discussed about that before, and those will follow generically kind of the. I think, you know, we were discussing
Order
the-
system,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. A kind of pet system, even.
Right.
You know, adopted majority of the pet system with the added bonus of kind of objective-based points of interest that you can assign them to.
Right. So you don't
Okay.
have to micromanage them.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right.
But we don't want to inundate the field with these mercenaries. They'll be kind of few and far between. They'll be assigned specifically, like, let's say, for example, you know, as the mayor of a node during a siege, you'll be able to assign these to specific players that are citizens within your node, and then they'll have those. They'll spawn during the node siege, or vice versa. In the castle siege, you know, guild leaders can assign mercenaries that are available based on the progress of those subsidiary nodes around the castle siege, whether or not you have those available to your defense or your attack.
All right. Not the Stink Bomb asks, will dwarves have a resistance to magic?
You know, there's one thing I loved about Fantasy Warhammer is the kind of the rune lords and the dwarven anti-magic, you know, innate anti-magic. It sucked that in 8th edition they didn't have like a spell compendium to utilize, or wizards, but it was really cool that it was very hard to use magic against them. However, in Ashes of Creation, no, they do not have an innate resistance to magic. They may have some racial passives and or racial skills
That they can spec
that
into.
They can spec into, exactly.
Right.
But they don't come right out of the gate with
right,
it.
right.
correct.
Okay. Illisvet asks, to what extent can players hide in plain sight for the MMO, like if you turning your nameplates off, or something like that?
You can't. I mean, outside of stealth skills and abilities, there is not really a default stealth mechanic
Yeah, I'm
that any
trying to
player
think
can
of-
utilize.
Well, I think more specifically, like, would I
Like,
be
when
able
I
to
use
turn
stealth,
my
will
nameplate off to, like, hide in a bush so that no one would be able to see my name over my head?
Oh, if you use
it's-
stealth as like a invisibility skill, yes, you will not have a nameplate.
Right. They're talking about like if you don't, right? Like if I'm just
Right.
like
Trying to be
hiding in a
literally
hedge
hide in
somewhere, I
plain
can turn
sight.
my
like,
my thing off, and I don't think that's
You
gonna happen.
cannot turn off your nameplate replication to other players unless you're using a specific skill that allows for that.
okay, like some sort of invisibility or
Right.
something that would hide you all the way. All right. Private asks, will vertical combat in Apocalypse, like when I slice someone in midair when they might be vulnerable because they're mid-jumping, be a thing in the MMO as well?
I mean, positioning will be important. There's two ways I could interpret that question. Is that if somebody's jumping over me and I whack them in the feet, they will take more damage than if I just whack them in the face. Which I don't think we're going to be that complex with our positioning. However, with action combat, there's no flat plane, right? It's 3-dimensional combat. So yes, you will be able to hit people who are in midair.
Right, and there might be, there might be like accuracy penalty for shooting upwards against a player.
Or if somebody's in the air,
Or
you
if
know,
somebody's
yeah.
in the air, right? There could be even lifted states, right? Where, let's say, you know, a mage, a wizard has the ability to kind of do a CC effect on a player, and it kind of lifts them up or something. And that might have lifted state might have certain detriments
Right.
or debuffs. Yeah.
All right. Neris asks, will there be levels of bonding between rider and mount? For example, riding a mount for longer will increase its stamina, health, etc.
There's definitely progression for mounts. right?
Yeah.
That we want to have, skills unlocked during that progression, right? So that like charge through abilities. That was something I really loved about Arcade, was that different mounts would have different types of abilities, and part of our design process for mounts within Ashes of Creation is to incorporate that, and that could be gated behind a progression system, which one might say is a bonding with your mount.
Right. I mean, how you interpret it would be, basically the lore that we write around it. But yeah, one of the things we'll probably try to avoid is time-based things like that, where the incentive is just to like leave your computer on for a while and have your horse run around in circles for hours and hours and hours. But I mean, yes, there is a progression system, and that progression system may include bonding, right? Like, or that.
The problem there was that in that specific example was that they granted experience to the mount via travel distance.
Right.
If you make sure to incorporate it only to having your mount out during like XP sessions, then you kind of avoid the circle.
Right.
But, or specific mount questing.
There's just like 20 horses running around the node,
In a circle.
just gaining
Doing a lap.
experience.
I used to
Leveling it
I
up.
used to hide in my house and just run in circles.
Yeah, there you go. You're just standing there, jumping. Gotta get my jump up. Jumping. Okay. Adorbus asks, we see many games that require months of grind just to be remotely competitive in PvP. In Ashes, will one have to play hardcore in order to be effective / competitive in PvP, or will more casual players have a chance at it as well?
So we definitely want, so there's a general, issue that's present obviously in, MMOs that we've all played in the past, which relate to the ability to cater to more casual players, because obviously a more populated server is more fun even for the hardcore individuals, right? You want to have, players who do things like crafting and participate in the questing and help build up the node.
Fodder.
And, I wouldn't call them fodder because because
You're not helping the argument, sir.
Sorry.
I know. I was gonna say, the balance is you want to make sure that your game design incorporates a relevant position for the more casual players who don't have the time to play hardcore, but at the same time reward the more hardcore players who do spend an amount of time so that they feel they're spending that time achieving something. And that's a delicate balance to have. One of the ways we've addressed that in Ashes of Creation is making sure that there's not just one relevant progression path, which is your adventuring class, right, where PvP tends to reside in, but rather that there's a multitude of progressions that you can participate in, whether it comes to, developing your freehold and participating in the economic systems and or the commerce systems and building up a node and helping to participate in the organizational structures and the guild structures, participating in castle sieges. Making sure that there are relevant positions within the battle systems of, let's say, a node siege, a castle siege, a caravan fight, a guild war, that are objective-based, and players might not need to necessarily be relevant as a toe-to-toe with a player.
One-to-one.
Right,
Right.
but
Exactly.
rather are incorporated in a grand strategic structure that has important objectives that they can achieve regardless of if they're a casual player or a hardcore player. So those types of design elements are incorporated. Obviously, I believe that other games have attempted to achieve that type of parity, but have failed to do so. I think we'll do a good job because we're placing things like PvP at the forefront of our design implementation and testing, rather than leaving it as an afterthought once the game is complete, so to speak, which feels like some other games have tried to do. But yeah, sorry.
All right. No. Why are you apologizing?
Good answer.
Yeah. All right. We've got just a couple more questions here before we wrap it up and we go get to eat our urban plates. So
I can't wait.
I'll release you to go eat your food.
Hopefully there's stuff left.
Luna Delmar asks, are you planning to use Unreal Engine 4.24 or the next stable version of it?
Oh,
Sure
we
am.
always keep ourselves up to date with the engines as they progress. There's obviously going to be a point in the future at which we're going to need to nail down our engine version and prepare for commercial launch. But until that date comes, we are regularly keeping up to date and moving forward with the engine.
The way the engineering team has kind of constructed, our sort of link-ins to the networking and all that is it allows us to upgrade relatively painlessly. So we just went through an upgrade to 4.23 not too long ago. Everybody on the studio was able to upgrade without difficulty, and it's props to them for architecting that out and making sure that upgrades are as painless as possible for us. So until we get to a point where we can't upgrade anymore, we're going to keep upgrading.
Yeah, and it really the upgrade process is comes down to a lot of well, never mind, you answered that well now. Sorry.
All right, these last couple of questions came from our Russian community, actually, so thank you guys for adding those as well. These came from Summer J, who asks, will we see other races in Apocalypse? Beyond, we have our elves and
Like
our
playable
humans right now.
races?
Yes.
There are definitely other
Oh,
races right now.
You know what? It just said races, but I was assuming playable races.
I was
Yeah.
assuming the playable races too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we'll have I mean, the idea behind Apocalypse is the ability to take things as they are ready to be implemented there from the MMORPG and have it as a test bed in Apocalypse. And part of that is going to be races.
there's some questions that go into that in terms of like size and hitboxes and stuff like that. But you know, we'll probably see. We'll definitely see. Other ones.
And then the last question here was, will the quests and levels, I guess more specifically the quests for Siege, be the same as the BR or on a different path? And this is as relates to the
Yeah,
legendary path.
they will all take place in the same adventure path. There won't be multiple adventure paths, but there will be some quests that are probably aspected toward Castle Siege and some quests that are aspected toward BR and some that are agnostic and don't care about which mode you're playing in.
Gotcha. So like a get 200 kills one might be agnostic on both. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for answering those questions, and thank you all for submitting your questions
Thanks, you
again.
guys.
Like I mentioned, usually the week before our live stream, we post up on the forums. We also let you know on Discord, Twitter, and Facebook that our live stream's coming up, and we ask you to submit these questions. So if we didn't cover your question today, or if you have something you'd like us to answer in the future, definitely keep an eye out for that so we can get your question in the future as well. And thank you guys for tuning in today.
Yes.
After the stream ends, we will be uploading this VOD. You can see it as a highlight on Twitch, but we will also be uploading it to our YouTube channel as well. And as usual, make sure to tune into all of our channels. We are at Ashes of Creation everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, over on Discord. Come join us. Come join in the conversation. Like Stephen was mentioning earlier, those dev discussions are a lot of fun.
They're
Very
super
helpful,
useful
too.
too.
Yes. And I'm going to say next month, similar to this month where we did our live stream a little bit earlier because of some holiday stuff, it may be similar next month.
Speaking
as
of
well.
holidays, happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving to
Yes,
our
Happy Thanksgiving, viewers.
Thanksgiving, yes.
Brew Bear says hi.
Yes, Brew Bear says it's time to get Brew Bear time. All right.
Drink your beer.
Have a safe holidays, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Have a great Friday. Have a great Thanksgiving.